Hey guys, this is Danny Cruz here and welcome to another Oboe Files video. Today we're going to be talking about reed making, finally. So today I want to get a big picture view of the reed making process from tying to scraping. In the future videos we're going to get into the nitty gritty of each step, but for today let's just make a reed. I think it's super important for step one of reed making to make sure your desk is an absolute disaster. Make sure there's some non-reed making related things, some cane, dangerous razor blades in places that they probably shouldn't be, and of course just water and miscellaneous reeds everywhere. The first thing you're going to want to do is clean this mess up. Okay, so now that that's done, you can finally get into your tools. So try to have a place for everything as much as you can. I know reed making is inherently kind of messy. So the first things you're going to want to kind of know about is the things you need to have to make your reeds. So number one is this funny looking pokey device is the mandrel. This guy we're going to use whenever we're going to wrap. So we'll need some thread and staples for that. This guy right here is our knife. I use looks like this is a True knife. It's a copy of double hollow gourd razor. But you can get other kinds. Rigotti makes a good one. Chednow used to make a good one that I liked. You need a chopping block, which I keep in this little compartment. And that's for clipping when we're ready for that. And lastly, we need a ruler, just to make sure that everything is up to code. Great. All right, so now that that's done, let's skip over to the tying part, and we'll just jump into that, assuming that you kind of already know how cane works, and we'll talk about that in another video as well.
And now it is time for Misquotes of the Masters. Today, Mr. Richard Kilmer.
Just scrape away everything that's not a reed, and everything that's left is a reed.
And now, back to reed making.
Alright, so the first thing we want to talk about is reed economy. You can actually take really old, nasty looking dead reeds. Maybe like some young student chomped on this or stepped on it or threw it into the garbage disposal or something, because they end up looking terrible. And you can take the tube part and recycle it a couple times. They won't last forever, but they'll last a while. So if we just take your junk knife, maybe the knife you don't use principally, and kind of just scrape on that thread a little bit, you can take the thread and the cane off of the staple. Now that you've got your staple bare naked, you can put it on your mandrel, and depending on your mandrel staple kind of combination, they'll either fit really snugly, like this one's pretty good, or they won't fit snugly at all. Every mandrel is made for a particular staple, so just know that going in. This is one I'm probably going to make for a student reed, and it fits more or less snugly. If I was making it for myself, I'd probably have the correct staple for this mandrel, which is this looks like it's a Chednow mandrel, and that would fit perfectly snugly. This one fits all right for our purposes, so we'll move on. The next step is the long-awaited knot to tie. Now this is a really cool knot that I'll probably make a whole video about, but basically the idea is you just kind of want to get in the rhythm of it, and you just kind of loop your thread around. We're going to use this cool green thread today. Just tie a knot at the end, and this is like Mr. Kilmer's signature knot, so if you've ever seen him do it, you know he does it in like one fell swoop. Probably like 5 times faster than that, but that was pretty fast. So you got that on there, kind of give it a couple twangs, and this knot will not come undone, and it will not break the thread unless you're, being really brutal. So just know that it can hold a lot of tension, but not infinity tension. Alright, so you got your knot done, and we'll talk about knot making in another video, of course, right? Like, this is just the wholesale version. We'll get into the details later. Alright, so you got your elephant cup filled with water, and also some pieces of cane in there. They've been soaking already. This is like pre-cooked cane. They've been soaking for about 20 minutes or so. I would say at least 15 minutes, but no more than an hour. After about an hour, they start to get soggy. And you don't like your cereal soggy. I don't like my cane soggy. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, so you got your staple in one hand. I use my left hand because I'm right-handed. And I've got my cane in the other hand. I use my right hand because I'm right-handed. And I'll stick it on to the staple, skinny end first. And I'm kind of just making sure it's symmetrical. And I've got my right hand kind of pointer finger on top of the cane so I can kind of keep the measurement flexible. And now it's time for that trusty ruler we've heard so much about. I'm going to measure from the base of the staple to the top of the cane. And now everybody has their preferences depending on where you grew up, who your teacher is, what flavor Kool-Aid you like, etc. But for me, I will make my cane length at 73. Now, when I was in the chemistry lab, people would get super annoyed with how precise I had to make everything, and I think that's just from the remaking. You start to get kind of paranoid at measuring things exactly. Does it really matter? Yes, it definitely matters. So just make sure that the measurements are what you say they are, because if they're not, you're kind of adding a lot of variables to your remaking, and frankly, it's hard enough. So make it easy on yourself. Make sure your 73 is actually 73, or if you're 72 and a half, make sure it's actually 72 and a half. All right, the next step we're finally ready for is the wrapping stage. So I've got my spool in my right hand, because again, I'm right-handed. All right, we might have to fast forward on this spot because this is like the most finessed and time-consuming spot. But just have the patience and finesse to not crack the cane. Alright, cool. So we got this guy tightened up. Notice that there's no more gap in between the blades of the cane on either side. I'm wrapping up here. Now, if you're not sure about how high to tie, notice you can't see the staple underneath anymore. You can either measure with your ruler, and remember that the staple is a certain length. My staples are 77 or yeah, I think they're 77 millimeters. I need to check. I almost don't remember anymore because I haven't checked in a long time. Some people use 76 millimeters. But the best way is probably just to like measure against a reed you just tied and just see that they're tied at the same length if you're consistent with that. And if you're not, that's all right because you always have a blank staple you can use to see what is the length of the tie, and this one's actually perfect. So just keep in mind, you will get better at it and you'll be able to eyeball it. My teacher, I feel like he could eyeball it from across the room. So eventually, when I'm 76, I hope to also eyeball it from across the room. But for now, you know, measure, be careful. Your remaking's as good as you measure, but don't lose sleep over it, right? You want to stay sane as an Oboe player, which frankly is hard. Okay, so you got the tie done. You got the staple on the mandrel still. Notice it's taut. If you want to check, just give it a nice little twang. It should be a high-pitched string sound. And this side, you know, you won't get that twang because it's on the spool. And we're gonna do the crossover. And you'll continue to tie to the bottom of the metal part exposed on the staple. Alright, so now we're ready for the knot part of the tying, and we're going to do that with one easy motion, and that is, you take your thumb, you put it on the part of the thread that is closest to your right hand, you wrap around your thumb and the reed, and you slip your spool through that loop you just made and pull. Again, don't lose sleep over it. Oboe players are crazy enough as it is. Crazy! It's just a reed after all, right? And you're gonna make thousands of reeds over the course of your long life as an oboe player. I already forgot how many times I did this knot. But again, it doesn't matter. At least 3, odd number, prime number. Do your best, right? You don't wanna be so crazy. All right, so lastly, once you're done tying the knots, you cut it. You get your knife back out. Just give it a good cut. Try to cut away from you, as always, safety first. And I'm about to break that rule, so, just be careful. You get better with practice. Just make sure your knives are sharp. All right, the next step is I'm going to cut off the ears. Notice that after the shaping process, there are ears on the cane, and those need to go, right? We don't want those. So cut as much of the cane as you can. It's the very top, so it won't matter if you lop something off as much, but the more cane you have as part of the reed will help your final product. So I will, if you can see here, just kind of get my knife next to the reed and slice toward my thumb. I'm not going too hard because the knife is sharp, and it will cut really nicely. I'm just trying to get that straight to protect the integrity of the shape. Okay, so the reed is looking pretty good. It kind of looks like a real reed now. It looks a little, jagged on the side of the top. If you want to spend time getting that down, it might be worth it. I think for this reed, I'm just going to go ahead and scrape on it. Maybe I'll do a little cosmetic change right there. Okay, and that's just like a millimeter, or less than a millimeter. Okay, so now we're going to scrape on the reed. The first thing you need to keep in mind is that the reed demands a slope. Okay, there is no sound production without a slope. So the thinnest part is, of course, the top of the reed, and it needs to gradually get thicker from the top. So I'm going to scrape just a few millimeters down. I'd say that's about like 5 millimeters, maybe 6, 7, around that. I'm not too worried about being exact on this spot, but it's about that far. If you're judging, you can use the reed as a perspective or my finger. And just kind of give it a nice little slope there. All right, once that's done, I'm going to come about a little more than halfway down the reed and just and that'll give me my back. I'll do a couple more there to just get rid of the bark. And notice that I keep the bark on the rails of the reed and on the spine for a little bit. So I'm just cutting around those 2 spots. And that'll give us that nice signature American scrape. And I'll do the same to the other side. And I'll probably make a video on the anatomy of a reed coming up, in case you guys aren't aware of that quite yet. If you click on any of these corners up here, I'm not sure how YouTube's going to do it in the future, but usually top, maybe bottom. It used to be on the bottom. But now it seems to be on the top, so you can kind of get that video if you need to know about the parts of the reed. Alright, so notice it is really rolling off that cane, and that's how you know your knife is well sharpened. You don't want to have it chatter. I can't even demonstrate how to chatter on purpose, but that happens sometimes. You might have your knife kind of scrape and I'll go go, like you are going over some speed bumps. Yeah, don't let that happen. That means your knife's not sharp enough. So make sure your knife is sharp and your angle is comfortable for you. Everybody has a different angle on their knife. So, if you're having someone else sharpen your knife, you might regret it, to be honest. Okay, so this looks pretty thin. I'm going to stick it back in the water for just a second, because I really don't want anything to crack, and we're going kind of quick here. And finally, we're going to clip it open. So this is going to be like a real life reed, hopefully. Are you ready for the moment of truth? If this doesn't work, we have to start over, because everything in the video before this will be invalid. Oh man, okay, so here we go. So a lot of people clip with a razor blade. I think that's fine. I just use a knife at this step. When I get more, finessed with the reed, more finished. I might switch to a razor blade, but depending on where I am, I might not. And I'm just going to clip as much as the reed needs to be opened. Okay, so this is the reed. Notice that there's a hollow spot inside, and that's where your air is going to flow through, hopefully. Not too much to it. It looks super crude still, a lot of bark still on it, but hopefully it'll vibrate, and let's find out. And it vibrates. So we got that slope in there. Let's go ahead and finish making this reed, and hopefully we'll have a reed in about 5 minutes. So this is your 5-minute reed happening. All right, so the next tool you're going to need is a plaque. I'm going to use this silver rounded plaque I've kind of become a fan of. They might be blued steel and pointy. I think that works great. Some people use contoured plaques. To everybody, use the reed tools that you like, that work for you. Other people have their favorites, and they might get super defensive about other people using their not favorites, but I think you should make reeds that work for you, right? And, for your students. All right, so you got your plaque. You're going to stick it in between the blades of the reed, and if the reed was well shaped and the cane was well selected, the plaque will actually fit snugly, so you'll be able to kind of like hang the reed from the plaque. And the first thing we're going to do is make the tip. So you come down to about 76 millimeters from the bottom of the staple and just kind of work your way to the end. And I'm actually going to switch knives here to a little bit better sharpened knife. And notice how the cane will just kind of roll off onto the plaque. I'm not that worried about getting it super thin. I want it to be very sloped, however. So remember that the slope is the vibration. And I'm not starting the same place every time. I'm just getting the cane to roll off to the tip. So notice that there's rolls happening. And again, I'm starting about 76. And that's about where I started making the tip when we started the blank. All right, so we've got this the tip a lot thinner. And there's starting to be a little bit more definition for this tip. And we're going to clip a ton off this tip. Notice it crows already. So the cane will crow at this point. And you'll get a nice, like, solid pitch out of it. A lot more noise is happening in this reed. So that's good. All right, let's clip some of this tip off. Okay, and crazy stuff might start to happen. So we've got the tip vibrating a lot, but we need the rest of the reed to vibrate too. So we got a ton of bark on the rest of this reed. We're going to scrape it off real quick. Again, this is just making a 5-minute reed. We don't want to spend all day on this guy. We got stuff to do, places to be, oboes to practice. And so I'm just kind of going as I go. You're going to want to make the back rise to about 61 millimeters from the base of the staple. And I'm actually going to take the bark off of the heart completely. So any bark I see, it's got to go, right? Wholesale. Wholesale scraping. If you go to Costco, this is the kind of scraping you will see because it's wholesale. All right. So I just keep making sure that the plaque doesn't move from where I wanted it. And I'm just doing these rolls on the back to get that guy nice and thin where we want it. And we want to keep the heart thick. So take the bark off, but don't get into the pulp of the cane. All right, if the cane is good quality, it will hold together because it's got a certain density to it. If it's not great quality, you'll have to kind of restart a lot. I'll let you kind of be the judge of the quality of this cane just by looking at it. But to me, this cane is holding together pretty well. And it feels pretty good under my knife. So I've got a good feeling about this reed. Whenever I finish it, probably tomorrow or in somebody's lesson over the week, I'm sure they'll be really happy with it. All right, so we take our chopping block, we place it down, we put our reed upon the block, and we just kind of lop off the head like some sort of aristocrat in France. And it's already crowing a lot more finessed. this is your 5-minute read. If you need a read now, this will probably do the job. Is it a finished read? Probably not. We're going to put it to the test in just a moment. I'm going to play it and we'll see how it does. All right, so we've got our oboe together. I'm going to put the read in here to see how it does. And remember, this is not a finished read. This is just the read that we needed in 5 minutes. So you can be ready to go and play your lesson or maybe a rehearsal. Probably not a concert unless you really needed to. Okay, so future refinements for this tip might include scraping up the sides of it. I might want to do the cutting again. Definitely clip it a lot. It's quite long and a little unruly, but in general, it works in the low notes. We have good response. The pitch of the octaves kind of holds in place. It's not quite perfect yet, but you can definitely play in the high octave and the higher notes. I hope that you take this information and use it as a guide. I don't expect beginning reed makers to get to this step right away, but at least have it in your mind to where you're going. Practice each step. Don't expect your reeds to come out perfectly. You're gonna make a lot of reeds, and that's great. I hope you have fun reed making, and I hope this video helps you. If you've gotten any value from this video, why don't you go ahead and send it to other people who are making reeds for the first time or for the 9,000th time. And if you want to keep up to date with this channel, other reed making videos, other fun oboe things, go ahead and click subscribe down below, and I'll see you on the next Oboe Files video.